With a gun in her hand, Addie Polk apparently shot herself in the chest as deputies were knocking on her door with eviction papers in hand.
This dramatic increase in mortgage fraud cases was the canary in the mine. It was the warning.
This was money chasing people. This was not somebody looking for a loan.
It was all designed to maximize profits for all of the different players.
The Con is a docu-series that undertakes an in-depth investigation into that 2008 financial crisis. 9 years in the making, and identifies key players, why this happened, and how corporations took priority over the American people.
So here to tell us more about the financial crime docu-series is the Con's director, Eric Vaughn, and the filmmaker, Patrick Lovell. It's great to see you both. Thank you both for joining us.
Congrats, guys. Great to have you.
Thank you for having us. Here. We love you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Patrick, let's start with you. You talk in the documentary about how you were inspired to make this documentary because of losing your own home. So tell us about that experience and how the film kind of came together.
Well, I'm a producer. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also a competitor. So that means I believe in the free market. And I understand how things are supposed to work when, let's say, billing goes sideways. And as a homeowner at that time period, I was really paying attention to the implosion. And ultimately what happened was, in the midst of all of this, my life was falling apart and nothing made sense. I was watching mainstream media all the time. And Crystal, I think you'll appreciate this because you were there at the time. Ultimately, the only thing that actually spoke to me was when Dylan Ratigan exploded on MSNBC and started putting things together. And as a producer, I was like, well, you know what? None of this makes sense. So we got to figure out what's going on. I went to someone I knew in my community who became a partner on this project. And from that point forward, we started pulling the thread that led to a 9-year journey in Odyssey. And we were in for much more than we could ever anticipate. But I can tell you on this side of the fence, especially given what you guys talk about, we put together what everybody intuits, i.e. that the system is rigged. They just don't know who did what, when, and how, and what they got away with. This is the largest criminal conspiracy in history, the largest conspiracy of lies in history, and the largest cover-up in our nation's history. And we put it all together.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan was one of the most salient voices on that issue. It's funny, on this show, we've actually found that some of our best guests, most frequent guests, are people who really cut their teeth during that crisis, because, Eric, it has shaped so much of the landscape since then, and so much of how we all think about politics, economics, corruption, and all of those things. What are some of the strings that you were able to pull here? What was the story that you wanted to tell and expose that hasn't been told yet?
Well, I mean, for me, it was very clear once we started gathering information that this wasn't an economic or a financial documentary. It was a true crime documentary. And that's how I wanted to build it. And so the central story of the Con, the central personal story, is that of Addie Polk. There's a bit of her on the clip that you just showed. And when we discovered her, what we discovered was that she was sort of a prototypical victim of both predatory lending and mortgage fraud. And so she ended up becoming critical in that regard. As we followed the story, we discovered that there was a task force in Summit County that had somehow managed to actually successfully prosecute a small version of the same set of crimes that was happening nationwide. And when we found that, it became clear that the direction of the documentary was to go and try to understand, are these crimes that we're seeing nationwide the same things that we saw in Akron? And if they are, why was Akron able to prosecute it, but somehow the Department of Justice wasn't? Mm-hmm. And that became like the main thing that we were trying to uncover.
Yeah, and Patrick, that really was, I mean, so mystifying to people at the time in 2009, whenever you saw, I mean, all this mass financial fraud, and you saw the bailouts, and you saw so much more. And the Obama administration, I mean, more than anybody, really just tried to kind of sweep it all under the rug and move on. I mean, let's talk about that. It seems like such a central part of the story.
Well, that's the point, and you get it right all the time. I watch it all the time, and I'm like, boy, what could these guys do if they understood what we have? And now here we are talking to you. It's amazing. Look, Crystal, you just asked the question, how is this different? The bottom line is, guys, everything that's come out on the financial crisis, honestly, is wrong. There's a lot of fantastic work. In fact, the people that I follow very closely and intersects with our, actually our development are folks like David Dan, folks like Matt Taibbi. And of course, I pay close attention to Matt Stoller. You put all of those guys together, and everything that they're talking about ultimately led us in the direction to be able to find really all the heroes of this madness. Because right now, the biggest conundrum for people is to understand, well, wait a second, aren't we supposedly a nation of laws? Isn't there equality of the law? Isn't that what we were all taught to believe growing up? And we have this expectation that that's the case, and then we celebrate heroes in every generation. You guys frequently talk about the New Deal. Well, the New Deal happened as a direct result of a gentleman by the name of Ferdinand Pecora. He was an investigator, a Sicilian immigrant that FDR put into position to make the case against Wall Street. And as a result of that, they came up with Glass-Steagall, among other things. But basically, they aired out the facts. They didn't have a congressional investigation where a bunch of congressmen were politicizing the ideas of what took place. They had a professional prosecutor lay out the facts to the American people. And after the Great Depression, they stormed the Capitol and demanded that government act for the people. Now, our whole story started because I'm a citizen. And I thought to myself, well, wait a second. I'm going through this madness and I feel like I'm completely expendable. And so when I went to our executive producer out of Brooklyn, I said, I'm not expendable. Nobody else is. I got to find out what the heck is going on here. And his framing was, look, if you can figure out how we went from of, by, and for the people to of, by, and for the corporation, then I'm in. That began this incredible process where we literally found the experts. To put this into perspective, one of our mentors on this project is a gentleman by the name of William K. Black. And I would encourage you guys, if you ever get around to watching our series, hopefully sooner or later, because it's the intersectionality of everything you guys talk about. Everybody who was our interviewee list, on our list, are former directors of investigations for the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, who put 30,000 criminal referrals together during the S&L crisis and over 1,000 white-collar criminals in prison. And that's when our system worked. What we learned from William K. Black is we went through a 4 decades long, well, really, it starts in the Reagan administration, but goes on overdrive during the Clinton administration. But we call them the 3 Ds: deregulation, desupervision, and decriminalization. What that means is these guys above the line, I'm talking about people with access, people with power, people connected to the heavy power, which is finance in this country, they do not operate like the rest of us. So, for example, if I lie to the government, it's perjury. If Wall Street lies to the government, it's the business model. Now, you guys know bits and pieces of this because you cover it nonstop. But this is who did what, when, and how, and what they got away with. And here's the big kahuna, two things, right? Eric talked about Addie Polk. She's a 91-year-old African-American widow who, on the day that the sheriff came to evict her from a house that she lived in for 4 decades, she shot herself in the chest 5 times. She didn't die right away. She died 6 months later, but as a result of the complications of the situation. But when she committed suicide, well, she did it because she didn't want to be homeless. But she was actually targeted by this system. This system swept up millions by targeting people. And what we do is we deconstruct the methodology of this madness. And we connect it to the corner offices of Wall Street, and it's insane. And so a lot of people think, right, well, wait a second, this was a story that happened 12 years ago. No, it's a story that's happening now. What they got away with then is what led to what we're dealing with now. And it wasn't a $750 billion TARP package that Wall Street paid back. It was a $29 trillion transfer of wealth built on a conspiracy of lies. And that's what we reconstructed with the head guys from the FBI, the head guys from the Department of Justice, the head guys from the Securities and Exchange Commission, the head guys from the AG's offices who got this right. So I promise you guys, if you dive in, you're going to find so many people, including whistleblowers, that were in the C-suites. For example, we've got Michael Winston, who had the case against Angelo Mazzillo, a guy that got away with a $500 billion Ponzi scheme.
Right, I recall that.
Ultimately, Robert Rubin got put on notice by Richard Bowen. Dick Bowen is a national treasure. This guy was profiled by 60 Minutes. He ultimately not only he went the distance, he got shut down by human resources, by his bosses, on an $80 billion scheme that Citi was using to defraud investors. How? Because it was illegal reps and warranties, guys. This wasn't like something that just happened because of market forces.
And I want to get Eric in here for final thought here. I mean, we're covering so much of what's going on now with the coronavirus bailouts and the economic crash that seems to be looming around the corner. Millions of Americans facing potential homelessness in the present day. I mean, how does your work on this film inform how you're viewing the current economic situation today?
Oh, goodness. Well, basically, I think that what we do in the con is basically help set the table for what we're experiencing now and what we're about to see. I mean, so many of the headlines today is about, like, the upcoming foreclosure crisis, the upcoming eviction crisis. I mean, these are things that are central to our... I mean, why are so many different people, you know, like, already homeless at this point? You know, well, a lot of them were made homeless from 2008. And probably the biggest thing that has super relevance to today, especially considering some of the news coming out of Kentucky, is how this affected the pensions and how so many pensioners that are like facing the cliff, probably about 2025, are so because of 2008 and then everything that's happening. And of course, you see the corruption out of Kentucky, and it's just what we're living is kind of just the current iteration of everything that happened in 2008 and before.
Yeah, such an important point. Quickly, Eric, where can people watch the film?
We will be on Facebook Live on August 5th at 8 o'clock. We will also be doing a virtual screening series. So if you find your local theater website, you'll be able to find us and download us there and watch us there.
Highly encourage everybody to check out the entire series. It's a really great interview. Thank you so much for you both for bringing it to our attention, for coming on the show.
Appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you guys. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll have more Rising for you after this.